I saw an article that really touched me. It's called "We Should Listen to Reverend Barber on White Poverty and Multiracial Organizing," and that kind of tickled my fancy. As I'm perusing these different articles, and the guy who wrote the article, Louis Steele, white guy, rich from a wealthy family, but he's a civil rights attorney. And that even piqued my interest some more. Rich guy, concerned about what this reverend has to say about the white poverty, etc. And I want you guys to remember, I interviewed Barber 2 or 3 times. And when he came out with his book called White Poverty, I interviewed him on another subject, but he brought up that the book was coming out. I haven't interviewed him since the release of the book, I don't think. I'm going to try to look that up. And, whatever the case is, I got an interview due with Dr. Reverend Barber. But it is so important what this guy says. I want to read the beginning of the article and then kind of expand on it a bit. It goes as follows. It says, for progressives to win, we need a powerful multiracial coalition. And that's true. The reason you should always, in a country where race matters, it shouldn't, because race is a stupid thing. It's a social construct designed to divide and conquer by our economic system. A lot of people don't see the connections, but as I do more studying, reading, etc., and how the corporation is formed and how we get an economic system that we get, I'm able to discern that colorizing people, finding a visual method and more to separate people is the essential thing necessary for an unjust corporatocracy as we have today, even though a lot of people don't see it yet. One of the things we're going to get towards. It's imperative that we have manners in which we can tell people you're different than that person, you're better, you're worse, create pecking orders, etc. So the only way true progressive values work if everybody is engaged, multiracial, multi everything. Because everybody has to feel that oneness, that we're all fighting together for something that benefits us all, irrespective. Continuing with the article, he says, that includes the people of color who disproportionately suffer property and structural violence, but also includes the white people who make up the largest share of poor people in the country. People don't realize that because the country is an overwhelmingly white country. Of course, even though proportionally people of color suffer more poverty as a percentage of their population, the largest group of poor people by multiples are white people. That's where most of the poor exist. And let me just say something. If that weren't the case, a lot of the social programs that we have wouldn't have been realized anyway. Remember how the New Deal was distributed in the beginning, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So as Reverend Dr. William J. Barber points out in his book, White Poverty, there are more white people than any other racial group, and more effort should be put into pulling them into this coalition, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And I spoke to Barber about that before, and that is where the only way we win, the progressive values win, is we bring all into the fold. This is what the author says now. I'm a white man from a wealthy family and a lawyer who took on tough civil rights cases, fought them as if my life depended on it. My goal from the beginning was to join those who are trying to make America a better place, a country where racism and sexism would slowly fade away and where the possibility of equal opportunity would shine through. I see that road forward in Reverend Barber's new book, that book that we called White Poverty. But this is shocking what he found out, because he talks to a lot of people, the lawyer here. This is what he said. Talking to white people in all walks of life, from taxi drivers to restaurant workers, as well as bankers and stockbrokers, has been very revealing. When I say I'm a civil rights lawyer, their voices often take on a certain unsympathetic tone. Whoops! Here's this rich white lawyer speaking to this middle class, poor, or working class taxi driver or janitor or whatever. And whenever he says he's a civil rights leader, the first thing that person thinks or has is that unsympathetic tone. And he says, and many times they inject the black crime rate into the conversation. Sometimes the person will shift the conversation to discuss black children being raised by single women who use food stamps to put on the table or who benefit from welfare programs. You see, the psyche in America is when you think somebody in need, somebody asking for something, somebody on welfare, crime, we have been programmed to colorize that. You hear crime, you think black person. Hell, even black people, whenever they hear crime and they see something on TV, the first thing they think, man, I hope that person isn't a black person. Because of the connotation all these stereotypes have. Poverty, black or people of color. Crime, black or people of color. Children out of wedlock, black or people of color. That is how people have been programmed to think, right? So that when we start asking for things for poor people, when progressive says we need these different policies for poor people, because in your psyche, you see poverty, unemployment, violence, and all these things as black issues, you have, and also you think of people of color and black as lesser than. It is easy for the corporatocracy, the government run by the corporatocracy, to limit what they claim they are willing to provide, because those who are in the same predicament as those people of color, black folks, etc., white people in those same predicaments will somehow alienate themselves from it, because that's those people problem. I may be starving. I may not be able to make my next bill. I may be underpaid. I may be all those things, but that's a problem for those other people. If you get what I'm saying here, you get to understand that by colorizing people, by racializing people, you abstract the pains of your own community because of the hate, because of the prejudice you have allowed to instill in you on others. It's magic, and it's essential for our economic system. It's essential for the wealth disparity. It is essential for the economic. It's, when Bernie Sanders used to talk economy, it used to frustrate civil rights leaders who say, why don't you talk race? They are intertwined in a manner that when Bernie Sanders is talking solely on economic issues, he eliminates the racial issues, which I agree with many a times, because if you put the racial issue in, suddenly that which everybody should be working for suddenly take on a different connotation. How can I be working on the issues of violence on out of wedlock people and out of people in poverty? How can I be talking about these issues? I mean, I am not them. How can I coalesce with them? And that's the magic. That's the magic. That is the magic. The guy continued, the lawyer. As Barber points out, there are more than twice as many poor white people as there are poor black people in the nation. But if I mention that, the person sometimes, in other words, he's talking to a taxi cab driver, a janitor or whatever, a white taxi driver, a white janitor, whatever, poor white person or whatever. He says, but if I mention that, the person sometimes appears not to hear me, or lets me know in no uncertain terms that it is black people themselves who are at fault for their poverty, and they should look to their own lives rather than blame whites. The government taxes us, I'm often told, to give them a free ride. When I hear this, I know there's something major missing. Yeah, of course. Most of the welfare programs, all the giveaways go not to black people. In fact, not even to, more of it goes to white people as poor white people, middle class white people, etc. But it also mostly goes to corporations. And who runs the corporations again? That's where most of our tax dollars go. Quantifiable, verifiable, discernible. It's all there for us to see. But by us colorizing everything, by us always in a racial context, and by us having a pecking order, a racial pecking order, we don't see it. Our economic system makes sure that we continue with the lies, that we continue with the misinformation, because in doing so, we can control all of you. We can control every single person, point blank. Punto y final. You know, the guy, I'm not going to read the entire article, but another part of it says, as a lifelong civil rights leader, I find that his signal resonates. As Barber persuasively argues, the public and the country's legislatures, federal, state, and local, accept the myth that poverty is only a Black issue, as do the people I talk to daily. They view poverty through this lens to the detriment of Black people and white people alike, as well as people of all other colors and races. And you know why? Because color, race, and all of that, folks, it's stupid. The biology of pigmentation, the biology of the physical attributes of one, etc., has so little to do with humanity. But it works in our economic system. It works in our economic system because if I can separate you on whatever, I can control you. And that's why you are all slaves. It's not the black folks were never the only slaves in this country. The largest slave group has always been poor white people. They just never knew it. As Barber points out, the political establishment invariably markets itself to the needs of the middle class and ignores the poor, and whites especially look the other way. The same is true even in our country's religious establishment. Barber notes that a Pew Research Center study of nearly 50,000 sermons found that neither the words poverty nor poor register as commonly used in American pulpits, even though Jesus Christ, right, always spoke about it. So in effect, what Barber has put together is a multiracial fusion movement. And it's under the auspices of the Poor People's Campaign and several other names and doctrines where he actually promotes this. It is essential for us folks to wake up. We have got to wake up. We have got to leave race aside. Yes, we have to solve the problems that were created by that separation, etc. But let me tell you something. You go into the ghettos of Houston or the ghettos of Baltimore, the ghettos of San Diego, LA, Las Vegas, and all these other major cities, right? It's right there exposed on TV for you to see. And yes, it looked pretty much, those areas look pretty much either Black or people of color, or however you want to name it. That's what it looks like. That's what people see on TV. What people don't see on TV is the mountains in West Virginia, the midst of Mississippi, throughout the Appalachian Trails, right up through Tennessee and all these other places, where most of the people that are there don't look like the people that you think of poverty. But the same ills that you find in those communities in Phoenix, Arizona, in Houston, Texas, and elsewhere, the same ills that are really socioeconomically based is what you find with our white brothers and sisters right in those areas. And you know who found that out, understand that, is Reverend Barber, why he created that multiracial Poor People's Campaign. And until we allow ourselves first to look at humanity itself for what it is, humanity, humane, humanity, not colored by hue, not colored by gender, not covered by any of these other things, but all of us, one for all for one. That's the only way we beat the oligarchy. Because the oligarchy would have the people below believe that racialization and all of that matters. But, you know, even during Jim Crow, we were dealing with the kings and queens of Africa. Even under Jim Crow, we were dealing with the folks in China. The folks in China, the Asians in America were always treated horrendously bad. Blacks in America were always treated horrendously badly. But of course, The oligarchy dealt with these people of these different hues differently when they're in China, when they're in the different countries of Africa, when they're in the different countries in South America, Latin America. They had agencies in those countries. They had human agency in those countries. So why they had no human agencies in America and America treated them with agencies in other countries they didn't here, it should tell you something. Again, when I say it's all economic, it's all the economic system dependent on racialization so that we can maintain the master-slave relationship between the oligarchy and the masses until we understand that. And yeah, there are the 10 or 20% that are the managerial and the class that's running everything else, right? But they are the ones that are sanctioned to keep you down. They are the ones that are sanctioned. And for all those who think that, well, the way the system works, I can accumulate wealth, then don't get sick and die, baby. Because the way the system is designed, by the time of your end of life, especially now, you will lose it all because the system does come back to take what it giveth, the oligarchy, the plutocracy. And if we don't understand these concepts as I'm talking about them now in its entirety and their interrelation, the problems will remain. And you know what? In this chaos, that's how they thrive. In this chaos is how they thrive.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.